everyone, and welcome to E-Class English Studies. We're considering the topic today, adjectival clause. So what is adjectival clause? This is actually part 1 of the meeting today, and it is powered by Sam's English e-tutorial. Alright, it is important to also note that I am your preceptor, Samuel Ikechukwu Emochuogo. I'd like you to subscribe our YouTube channel and of course follow us on other social media handles at Sam's English e-tutorial. Alright, thank you once again for joining us. Now let's get into the details of this meeting. Now we cannot talk about adjectival clause without referring to the entire clause structure of English language. Now what is a clause? A clause is actually a group of words that contains a finite verb and of course a subject. Now in terms of structure, we have what we call the clause, and it is made up of two major types. We have the independent clause, also known as the main clause, and at the same time known as a simple sentence. We have what we call the subordinate clause, which is also known as the dependent clause. Now the subordinate clause or dependent clause is further subdivided into what you call the noun clause, also the adjectival clause, which is what we are considering today. The adjectival clause is also known as a relative clause. We have what we call the adverbial clause. Adverbial clause also has indicators such as time, place, manner, result, condition, and so on and so forth. So this diagram actually illustrates the clause structure of English language. Now to adjectival clause. What then is an adjectival clause? An adjectival clause is also known as a relative clause, and of course remember it is a dependent clause. Now it is a clause made up of a subject, a clause marker, and of course a verb whose responsibility is to modify a noun as seen there. Now always know that you will always have nouns immediately after the nouns. You have the adjectival clauses. Okay, so like I stated it there, adjectival clauses always come right after the nouns they modify. So they actually modify a noun. Now let's quickly look at functions of the clause marker, because without the clause marker you cannot form a subordinate clause. Now in the case of adjectival clause, here is it. This is an adjectival clause. The group of words in red fonts, who won the context, is an adjectival clause. Now remember, you can drop the whole of that in the sentence and the sentence will still be meaningful. I can remove the whole of this and it will be meaningful. I can have the man was well celebrated, but then the presence of it tells us that it is an adjectival clause that modifies the noun. Okay, take a look at it. It modifies the noun, the man. Take a look at it. Who won the context actually refers to the man. I hope that is clear. Now in addition to that, it's important to note the functions of the clause marker. Now here is a clause marker. Who? A clause marker is also known as the subordinator. Please take note. Now the clause marker functions as that particular word or entity that introduces the subordinate clause. Now the whole of this is a subordinate clause. Take note. Who won the context is the subordinate clause, and of course you need the clause marker or a coordinator, a subordinator, to form a clause marker. Now what are the functions? Like I said, 1, in terms of the function, number 1, it introduces a subordinate clause. Number 2, it can also function as the subject in the absence of a subject. Please take note. It can function as what? The subject in the absence of a subject. So it performs dual function here. You have it as the clause marker, and at the same time it functions as the subject, because the next word after it is the verb. So a clause marker can also function as a clause marker, introducing a subordinate clause and at the same time performing the function of a subject in the absence of a subject. Now consider the second example. In the second example, we have the official whom we invited has not arrived. Now the clause marker remains whom. Yeah, take a look at this. This is the clause marker whom. It performs its function as the clause marker, and then we have in this case the subject, so, and of course the verb. So like I said, in the absence of a subject, the clause marker performs dual function, which includes It functions as the clause marker, and of course it functions as the subject. So here we have our verb. So take a look at this and of course study it closely. At this point, we call it a day. Thank you very much for listening. Please watch out for part 2. Part 2 is actually very decisive. Once again, this is powered by Sam's English tutorial. Of course, we're based in Nigeria, West Africa. Kindly follow us on our YouTube channel. Kindly subscribe our YouTube channel, and of course follow us on our various social media handles at Sam's English tutorial. Once again, I am your preceptor, Samuel. I hereby sign out.